And I think what I've realized throughout that, those all gave me tremendous shame, but there is no version of me that is 100%. There's no best version of me that I can shame myself into being.
All right, hello everybody. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the What You Don't Hear podcast. This is a life podcast. It's a story podcast. It's a bit of an open journal dive into people's lives as I sit and I uncover the real story behind my guest's journey, finding out what makes them who they are and all that they do, digging into the parts of their story that we otherwise wouldn't get to hear about. I am your host. My name is Ross Tyson. I'm a creative of many kinds, a self-employed maker of many things. And as you probably guessed, one of those things I do is indeed podcasting, as I bring you a couple different shows at this point. But this one right here, I bring you every other Monday, as well as sporadically on Fridays for those 15-minute Friday episodes. And I'm able to do all of that, plus create an entire podcast network of my own, due to some rad supporters and sponsors that I'm going to tell you about right now. And then we're going to hop into this week's conversation. You know how it's been going down here lately on the show. I'm going to tell you about these wonderful supporters, and then we'll get to it, because first we are supported by a few wonderful friends in this episode. But the first one I'm going to tell you about is our longest reigning supporter thus far. It's our friends over at Promo West Productions. Promo West is one of the lead concert promoters, not just here in Ohio, but in a few different places. But right now, I've got some Ohio concerts to tell you about. So if you're interested in catching a live show, then pay attention to the following list, because maybe you'll want to go and check out one of these upcoming concerts brought to you by Promo West. They've got Mac Air Race at Newport Music Hall on May 3rd. Then the New Pornographers are coming into town also at Newport Music Hall on May 9th. Then Coheed and Cambria at Kemba Live also on May 9th. And then Drive-By Truckers at Newport Music Hall on May 11th. So if you want to grab tickets to any of these, you can jump to axs.com. Or, as always, for more information on these shows or any other upcoming concerts, if you want to find out who's coming to town here in Ohio or any of their other venues in some other states, you can find all the info you need over at promowestlive.com. We are also supported by our friends over at River and Rich. Now, if you're ever down in the Franklinton area, if you're over at 400 West Rich, at Land Grant, Chrome Edge, or something, you've probably noticed that strip of buildings across the street that houses things like Maker's Social, One Line, Roy G. Biv, the brand new Franklinton Market, my new favorite place over there. Well, that is River and Rich, and they're making space in Franklinton for it to somehow get even a little bit cooler. So where can you live, work, and play all at the same time? Well, I mean, this is clearly an ad promoting River and Rich, so the answer is River and Rich, because living there goes further than just choosing a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, or townhouse-style apartment. Those are all there for sure, but what the goal of River and Rich really is to embrace and connect with the Franklinton community, and that is a community that is very art-driven, creative-driven, and one that pushes for a unique and interesting lifestyle, and they add to that in a lot of ways. They feature local art throughout many of their spaces, including pieces from Scrawl, and they continually add murals into their community as it grows. Now, the goal is to make River and Rich not just a place to go home to, but also a piece of living art in itself. It really is more than apartments. It's really a full lifestyle. A resident favorite feature is the local businesses that take up their current retail spaces. They have Yellow Brick Pizza, One Line Coffee, a wonderful plant shop called Jewelweed, the DIY craft bar Maker's Social, and of course a lot more. The most recent addition is the Franklinton Market, a convenience store that carries Jenny's ice cream, pet supplies, everyday household essentials, and of course late night snacks for those creatives like me that are staying up late over at 400 West or in the surrounding area. I'm telling you, Franklinton Market really came in clutch in a lot of ways. But also, other than that, River and Rich just aims to create a living space that supports these local platforms and the surrounding culture that Franklinton has built. It's true. Honestly, it's not just a random group of buildings that they're making to take up space. They really are trying to grow with the surrounding community. So if you do want to go check any of this out, they offer guided and self-guided tours. So come view an apartment anytime. You can visit their website at riverandrichcolumbus.com. Also, check this out. Because you listen to this podcast, I'm going to help you get a freaking apartment, because now new applicants can receive up to half off their security deposit if you go and let them know and you use the code WYDHPOD. So again, for more information, please contact River and Rich directly. Certain restrictions might apply, but hop over to riverandrichcolumbus.com to get things going and go join the colorful life at River and Rich. So a huge thank you to the sponsors for their support for this show. If any of what I said interests you whatsoever, then I urge you to go check them out. They're helping me keep the mics on around here. And speaking of that, let's go ahead and turn those mics on and let's get to this week's conversation, because it is a real rad conversation that I'm bringing you in this episode with my guest, Zach Thompson of the Scatter Joy Project. Now, Scatter Joy is one of my, recent favorite organizations and brands that I've come across. And I say organization or brand rather than just like a clothing company or something, because what Zach and his team are doing is much more than just like making some shirts and selling them and branding it in some certain way. They're really aiming to shed light on mental health, and they're offering resources, direct helplines, and lots of other great information to help really support anyone dealing with mental health issues. They are a nonprofit organization. And I don't know, that's just what the brand is all about. It's way more than the apparel they make, even though the apparel they make is super dope. There's a lot that goes into it. And I don't know, there's a lot that the brand stands for. And it's a lot of what Zach himself stands for. And of course, we do talk a ton about that in this episode. The formation of Scatter Joy, how it came from Zach's own personal mental health battles that he survived through. And I don't know, there's just a lot of great conversations surrounding mindset and mental health in general in this episode. Lots of vulnerability in this one as well. It's honestly what the show is all about. So let's just get to it. I'll let Zach tell you all about it. Let's dive in. Here is episode 82 of What You Don't Hear and my conversation with Zach. But otherwise, I feel like we're ready to go. Ready to make a podcast.
Yeah, let's do it.
Zach, my friend, welcome to the show.
Man, thank you so much for having me.
Dude, thank you for being down. I know we tried this a couple times. We finally aligned schedules and made it happen. I'm very stoked to dig in to so much stuff, because even just starting with it up front, love what you guys are doing with Scatter Joy.
Yeah, thank you, man.
Absolutely love it. And obviously I feel like we've garnered some sort of an internet friendship basically over the last, 6 months to a year or something. Yeah. I feel like we've seen enough of each other and what we're all doing and all that sort of stuff. But I'm excited to actually sit down and actually get to know you for the very first time.
Yes.
I'd love to even just dive in with maybe for anybody listening who doesn't know what Scatter Joy is, toss out that explanation. And then I'd also love to dive into how that even got started.
Yeah, so Scatter Joy, we're a Columbus-based mental health nonprofit. And so what we do basically is make mental health more mentionable, accessible, and affordable. And so we sell apparel and host events and point people to resources, and even have our own resources and our own crisis text line that we kind of help people get to a place of healing. I think when we launched the nonprofit, we were really asking ourselves the question, what gets in the way? I think that's a pivotal question in anything in our life. What is getting in the way of this? What is getting in the way of that? And I think the biggest question for us, especially during the pandemic when we launched in January of 2021, was what is getting in the way of people healing? Because COVID hit and it took everyone's coping mechanisms away. And we thought we had moved past some things mentally and emotionally, but really what we did was we swept them under the rug, and then the rug was taken out from under us, and then we were like, oh crap, I got all this stuff still, and now I have to stare at it, wrestle with it, try to move past it again. And so I was feeling that personally too, and we had a lot of friends that were connected to us that were kind of struggling with similar things, and I think we all were during that time. It was something that we had never really dealt with before, so we launched with what gets in the way. And for us, it was the negative stigma, the overwhelming search for mental health care and then the cost of mental health care. And so everything that we do, from apparel events, like I said, our podcast, different things that we do on a daily basis is to help people jump over those hurdles. We're never going to remove those hurdles in life. I think they're always going to be there, but we can help people over them. And so creating conversations, normalizing conversations, helping people find healthcare and doing so at like an affordable clip. So
yeah. And I love the idea that like, honestly, just so many different aspects of what you guys have done. Because a lot of it I see and I'm like, I don't know how to do that, but that is so like the text line, like all that sort of stuff. I'm like, okay, like that is awesome, because it's not just like, hey, we're just going to talk about it, post about it a little bit. Like I love the action that's being put on those further levels.
Yeah, I think like awareness has to happen first, but then awareness has to lead to action. And so for us, like as a nonprofit, we want to do both. Like we're yes and, right? Like we want to create conversations. We want to walk with people within their own conversations. We want to create apparel that starts and sparks conversations for other people to feel like engaged and equipped to go out and be advocates for mental health as well. But then on the back end, like, gosh, how cool is it for someone sitting in a coffee shop wearing a Scattered Joy hoodie or a t-shirt, and someone comes up to them and says, hey man, I like your shirt. And they're like, oh yeah, it's a mental health nonprofit, like blah, blah, blah. And you get to know, like it's a gateway to know someone's story, or maybe to even provide a resource for someone that you don't even know struggling, but you're like there, like you intercede in that way. And it's almost like this fate kind of thing. And so we've actually even talked about like putting our crisis text line and the suicide hotline, and we have a Find Help network on the website that people can search all over the nation for free and affordable, like reduced cost care. And it's not even just mental health care. It's like all the other contributing factors like housing and it's like crazy. It's awesome.
Yeah.
But we've talked about like putting those on a tag on the apparel. And I think that would just be cool, because then it's like,
awesome.
Oh, hey, like, yeah, text 741-741. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's the next level.
Okay, so how many people are involved in Scattered Joy?
We have like a team of like 5 to 8 that are kind of like doing a bunch of different things. We don't have any employees. No one's taken any paycheck or salary from it yet. We've just like really, really tried to fund projects and resources and events and apparel, and really trying to like it's not about us, you know, it's like about other people's stories. And so we just have a lot of people volunteering their time because they have a heart for it and they want to help people out. And I think what that takes and what that communicates is like, our tagline is their strength in your story. And so like people, they know about mental health, they know about their own struggle. And I think over time they've realized like, man, I can feel empowered in my own pain and go help someone out because they are or have struggled with the same things that I have in the past. And so, it's a small but mighty team.
So rewinding a little bit back into like pandemic time, when this idea is like in its infancy, like how is this, like, how does it come about? Is it like, hey, what if we like started an apparel brand that was focused on this?
Yeah.
Or was it like, let's start a nonprofit that focuses on this, and then cool, the apparel is a adjacent part of it? Or like, walk me through even like the actual startup process.
The lack of planning with it. Like we'll do that. Dude, so it was like, my daughter was born in November of 2019. I'm kind of a Ralph Waldo Emerson nerd. I just love like all his writings and stuff. He's like my favorite dead poet. And so I was like stumbling through doing some reading stuff. I was like off on like parental leave and everything. And I read a quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson that I had never seen before, or maybe I did, but it didn't spark anything in that time, in that place. And the quote says, there is no beautifier of a form or complexion or behavior like the wish to scatter joy and not pain around us. And I was like, ooh, there's something about like scatter joy. Like I didn't know what it was. And that was probably December 2019 or January 2020. I don't know. But I sat on it. I was like, man, I don't know what that is. And at the time I was like doing some like life coaching, and I would travel and speak, and I was like doing a blog and writing and different things like that. And so I didn't know what it was going to be. I didn't know if it was like a keynote. I didn't know if it was a t-shirt that I would just make on custom ink and then just make one of them and I would wear it, which I did. And, or like a blog post or anything like that. And just sat on it for honestly like a year. And at the end of 2020, towards the end of 2020, I was like, man, I think it's all those things. Like, I think it is an apparel brand. I think it is a blog post. I think it is a podcast. I think it is a keynote. I think it is a community. I think it is resources. And the cool thing about all those ideas is like those can be implemented, but again, all those ideas are awareness that need to lead to action. And so we launched with the goal to like provide those resources for people. And we launched with our apparel collection first, January 18th, 2021. And it sold out in 2 days.
That's so sick.
And I was like, what the heck is happening? I was like, man, people like must really like it. Like, it was just like such a weird moment. I took a selfie like in a dirty mirror, like in the morning with like greasy hair the next, like after it sold out. And I was like, this is my celebration picture.
Yeah.
So we churned out like another collection. And that was our way of raising money for the resources. And in the first year, we did like 11 different releases. Mm-hmm. And we always wanted to do like different designs and keep it fresh because that's like one of like our artistic ways of like expression and healing and different things like that. And it's just really cool. So yeah, coming up on like our 2-year anniversary. And it's just been wild so far. So yeah, it started with quote. And then just a bunch of like sitting around and wondering, there was no perfect plan. I think we're still trying to honestly like build the airplane while we're flying it right now. Mm-hmm. And like I've had people like connect with us and they're like, wow, man, like this is so cool what you guys are doing. And on the inside of the airplane, we're like, yeah, I hope it's cool. But like we still are trying to do this and this and this and this. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I feel like that's what so many of the insides of our airplanes look like. You know what I mean? Like we're like, it's flying, but like it might go down at any moment.
I need to duct tape this hole right now.
Like, do you happen to have any duct tape? Thanks for the compliment, by the way. Like, do you know how to pilot a plane, by the way? Trying to build a team here. Yep. So even on the team note, now you've got, you said around like 5 different people that
yeah, and that's out. Like our advisory board and volunteers, like mainly like volunteers that are like kind of they're like ride or dies, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so
what's it look like to volunteer for Scattered Joy? Like what is involved in that? Is it just like coming to events? Is it just promoting online? Is it helping with the resources? Like
yeah, we have a lot of different opportunities. I mean, it's like helping plan events, helping host different events if you're in that space, helping us fundraise, like doing different things that I think bigger. What I didn't realize is the complexity of larger nonprofits and like everything that went into it, and trying to do that like alone when we first launched.
I'm fascinated by share all that you want to share because I have no idea how that works.
Like, my gosh, man. My least favorite thing is asking people for money. I'm a nonprofit founder that runs on fundraising and donations and partnerships and sponsorships. And I hate asking people for money. It's one of like my complexes. And so having people that are equipped and having me ask questions and have them walk alongside of us like while we learn this thing. And there's a lot of different ways, man. And I think like the biggest thing and the coolest thing is like people coming to us asking those questions of like, man, how do I get involved? And we get to ask like, well, what are you really passionate about? Because like we don't really have any formal, like we aren't like a nonprofit that has a brick and mortar, houses people needs like physical donations or anything like that. We've done a couple projects that we collect coats and different physical like items and stuff, but like we don't have like a lot of like in your face tangible ways that you can just like volunteer that like really catch your eye. And so the coolest thing for us is we get to just ask people what they're passionate about. And I think the bigger thing is ask people what they're most compassionate about. And that's the cool part. I think like, and this is a tangent, but like I've spoken and written about this. It's like, man, everyone wants to find their purpose. And I think volunteering in a nonprofit is very purposeful. And that's like how people can like work in that space and like be purposeful in their life. But I think we have to ask ourselves, like, maybe what am I not passionate about? What am I more compassionate about? Like, what do I want my like heart to hurt for, and like really inspire me to like do that kind of work? And so we've had people like have conversations, host groups, different things like that. Or like if they're skilled financially, or like they have a fundraising background or a development background or an events background, they've helped in those ways too. I will say we just need to do a better job of it. Me as a leader need to do a better job of like building the plane while it's flying in that capacity, and like offering those opportunities to people.
Right. Well, I think obviously, and I know you know this, but even just to say it out loud, like obviously it already matters a ton, and you've done a great job so far that the plane is even off the ground. You know what I mean? Or like, like the fact that there was action put to the idea, or that there's action put to even trying to lead people and learn as we go. Like that's so much value there. And like, I even love the way that you describe figuring out like how people want to be involved, because I'm like 100% in favor of like, and this is a conversation I have with so many different people, is like what fulfills you. And it's not just, oh, this sounds cool, or I'd like to do that, or whatever, but it's like, okay, what's the next layer of that? Like, why do you want to do that? And I'm not saying that's the case for every single thing in the world. Sometimes I want to just go to a baseball game because it's fun, like whatever it is. Like, okay, yeah, that's fine. Not everything has to have some deeper, crazy, positive meaning or something.
Right.
But with certain things, I think it is often easy for people to overlook that, like, honestly, whether it's a good or a bad thing, I think. Like, what fulfills you from that, or what's the lack of fulfillment that you're getting from that? Like, that's one of my biggest things, like, whenever I'm talking to a friend who, like, is in a job that they hate or something. Like, okay, yes, you hate the job, maybe the boss sucks, and you don't like doing what you're physically doing at the job. Yeah. What in the fulfillment factor is missing that you would like in its place? Yeah. It's not just, I want to be paid more. I wish I was the boss. I wish, whatever. It's like, is it something that like, do you need to work that involves with something that you're just interested in general? Like, do you need a hobby to kind of like be involved with your work? Yeah. Or do you need to find fulfillment more outside of your work? Yep. So that way you're not going into work saying, oh my God, here's another bad part of my day. Yeah. And all that stuff is like such a side tangent, but like that is, you even saying like the whole like compassionate thing and all that sort of stuff. Yep. Like I feel like that goes, like it flows straight into that fulfillment factor of like, cool, why do you want to be involved with this? Yeah. In what way will this fulfill you? Yeah, I think the first thing we ask people is like their story. Like, what made you reach out to us? Like, what made you buy the piece of apparel? What made you donate? What made you come to the event? What made you want to even think about volunteering? And I think like when you start to ask people their story, I think it's a rarity, honestly. Like, I think there's so many times where we just go with the flow of life and we just kind of like stay on the surface level without like getting crazy deep with people. I think sometimes maybe we're scared of it. I think sometimes maybe we're even scared of our own stories, but I think like what we try to offer is a safe place for people to like open up, share, and then utilize the things that they're feeling and feel like empowered within the things that maybe they've struggled with. Like I said at the top, like, man, usually the things that you've struggled with are the things that you're like the most equipped to help other people with. Mm-hmm. And so like, even if you struggled with suicidal ideation, maybe the thing that you want to do to volunteer for the Scatter Joy Project is carry around our Find Help cards, which have our crisis text line on them, the free and reduced resources on them, and the suicide hotline number. And you just hand them out. Or maybe when you go to a coffee shop, you just leave like 5 on the table when you leave. That is a way of volunteering, and I don't think a lot of people realize that. But it's a simple way to like utilize your story for like a fateful like moment in someone else's life. And it's like an empowering way. It might not feel like a lot, but gosh, sometimes it's like the coolest thing. Whenever we do like a pop-up shop, or like we'll go to like different markets and set up a table or anything, we always put those Find Help cards in the bags, or like in like give them like multiples. We say, keep one for you, because it's like a great resource. You might not need it now, you might need it later. Mm-hmm. Give one to a friend or a family member that might need it, and then leave one some random place.
and like leave it up to chance and see if someone finds it. And you'll never know, but like, gosh, what a cool thing that is to be like, this is like hope. Like I'm like literally scattering joy right now by doing this. Mm-hmm. And so we love those. And that's like another cool way for people to like get involved. We like literally, pun completely intended, try to scatter those things throughout like our communities. We ship those things out to people that want to volunteer in that way. Just trying to get those cards honestly everywhere and make those resources available for people. So, right. But it goes back to like, what is the thing that you got through? What were the emotions that you felt? And where was the strength created within that to like even want to reach out to us and serve in any way? And I think like talking about fulfillment comes from deeper meaning of like your why and your purpose and your compassion. You know, like I am way more empathetic with people that have struggled with the same things that I did in my past. And so like if I can volunteer in that same way because I've struggled with mental health or suicidal ideation or depression or anxiety or self-harm or addiction or anything like that, then I'm going to do this kind of work really, really well because it's like fueling me because I know what it's like to be in their shoes. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's honestly like I feel like we're talking at a very good time because I'm in like a full sort of like I'm riding that wave right now where I'm sitting and officially kind of realizing, even though I've known it for a while, but I'm officially like picking it up and throwing it on my shoulders of like, yeah, this is what I want to do of that like helping others factor. Yeah. Of, hey, cool, like I know all the things that I've been through, and clearly like doing a show like this, it's built around people sharing their real authentic stories. And we're going to talk about the cool stuff that you do, but we're going to talk about how you got there and all the bad parts of that too.
Right.
And so like that value has always been there, and I've always loved connecting with people in that way. But just recently, the last handful of months after going through some stuff myself, I am now kind of like, now on the other side of it, I'm sitting and I'm saying, you know what? I've liked helping people with this stuff for a while, but now I'm like really going to put an emphasis on it. Now I'm really going to like focus in even more because like for years, my life has been filled with a bunch of creative things, right? Like video direction, photography, graphic design, all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
That stuff's all still there. I'm absolutely going to keep doing those things, love doing those things.
Yeah.
But it's a different type of fulfillment. And I think for a while, I honestly did. I'd love to know if you've ever felt this way. For a while, you know, I was always like the positive friend, right? I was always like, oh yeah, Ross is going to like have a good outlook on this. Or Ross is going to say to like, you know, like the neon sign up there, chase it daily. Like that comes from, it was a mantra before I knew what a mantra was. Like years ago, I would like hashtag that on like everything I did to be a reminder of like, okay, whatever your goal is, chase after it in some way, even if very small, every single day.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. We don't have to get a win every day. Just that little bit of momentum is good. And so even through things like that, like it was always kind of looked at in a way of like, oh yeah, Ross is the positive friend. Like, yeah, of course. Like he's going to try and like motivate you to chase your dreams or something. And for a while, even though I still led with that, I wouldn't lead as strongly as I wanted to. I would kind of tuck that down a little bit almost where I'm like, oh yeah, am I being kind of overbearing right now? Like, am I being a little bit of like a hype guy instead of like a realistic, like, hey, yeah, cool. Like you can follow your dreams, but like, I'm not going to get excited for you. Like, you know what I mean? And I think, you know, especially in the last, I would say year to 2 years and just recently, I feel like I've been steadily going to the side of like, no, I'm fully just going to own that part of me.
Yeah.
And yes, I never want to be like the overbearing friend, and I'm never going to like push it that way. But, you know, learning more of how to navigate these conversations and learning more of what I want to give to those conversations.
Yep.
Because the fulfillment that comes from those talks is like, I love getting to share that gift with somebody.
Yeah.
I can understand that my gift is conversing with people, connecting with people, not being afraid to like sit down and be like if you and I right now were in a coffee shop somewhere, we'd probably be having the same conversation.
Literally the exact same
one. Wherever this is going to go, like it would still lead to me being like, so what was growing up like? Like that's just naturally what I like to do.
Yeah.
And so
such
again,
a gift.
Like it's you know, I can identify like, okay, that's that relator tool, that ability to connect with people in that way on a real authentic level it's a gift. It's a superpower, right?
Yep.
I love making people comfortable enough to share those things. And I'm also going to be plenty vulnerable enough to be like, hey, let's just connect over this.
Yeah.
And I don't have all the answers for you, but talking about it can be of a lot of value. And so I've been just like really owning that a lot recently. So back to the question I asked you 20 minutes ago. Was there ever a time, like, did you ever feel like that? Because I'm assuming, like, has this kind of always been in the back of your mind of like, oh, I like to help people. I like to maybe think positively or, do something that is scattering joy.
Yeah.
Did you ever feel like you had to like hold it down at all? Or was it just a recent discovery or?
I don't think like maybe holding it down at all. I think like throughout the years, I was just like, discovery is a great word for it. Like discovering like who I am and how I could really help people, how I could really serve people and how I could walk with people. And I think a lot of that discovery came from like really like dissecting and wrestling with like the things that I had been through. To your point, like you have the superpower of like sitting down, being relatable, probably with like a plethora of like different diverse backgrounds of people and like anyone, honestly. Like you could like break barriers with people in that way. And I think like I can do that as well. I think it's because like I've been to the dark side and I've been to the light side. And I think I was created to honestly like live in between and be a bridge in between. And so like in my darkest moments, like being able to like go back to those and wrestle with those and say like, yeah, maybe like I was struggling with my mental health in these ways and I almost did this and I almost did this and I reacted this way. But to come out on the other side of that with like, honestly, the thing that gave me the most hope in those dark times was like that I could help other people. Mm-hmm. And that was the thing that I held on to. And so like, I don't know if I ever had to like numb it down or dumb it down or anything like that. I think like I was just always trying to discover and go back to honestly like the darkest parts of myself and like my story. And that probably maybe seemed to other people that I was like maybe dumbing it down in those seasons. Like it was a season of discovery. And so like I kind of like turned inward to like learn more about myself to then try to help other people. And I think like for me, I'm like an Enneagram 7. I don't know if you're like in the Enneagram world at all, but it's like
I think
this
I'm a 4.
adventure. You might be a 4. I don't know. I'm not like an expert. Yeah. I just know that I'm like a 7. So it's like adventure seeker, mostly extroverted, but like I'm actually an introvert. And so like, but I get these ideas and these dreams and I can get going and rolling with energy and all these different things. And I think sometimes people would look at that or know that about me and kind of look at me like kind of like caving in and going inward, and they'd be like, oh, what's wrong? But there wasn't really anything wrong in that moment or that season. It was just me learning more about myself really intentionally to then come out of that season of dormant and almost like a winter like we're in right now. It's like the leaves are falling off the trees. Like they don't look like they're growing, but the roots are growing deeper. But then they're going to come back and they're going to be beautiful. And so like, I think in the seasons where I was trying to, or to other people kind of like coming down, I was just growing stronger, honestly.
Right. Yeah, 100%. Like, do you think like on that change factor, right? Like the season of change that like we all go through at different times, something that I like really, really not only discovered and identified, but also really accepted is that I started to notice like, and this is probably also just comes with growing up, but like over the last handful of years when I've really, really focused in on a lot of this stuff, I kind of noticed that I feel like I change and evolve once every like 4 to 6 months. And that doesn't mean that I become a different person and like different things and I drop stuff that I did before or something, but I gain a new understanding, a new perspective, and I learn something from that and then begin to implement that into my next wave of whatever. Like, oh, I've now learned this. That means I'm going to do this slightly differently, or I can carry this with me forward.
Yeah.
Do you think like, and this kind of goes hand in hand with the mental health thing, or you could take it a different direction, but like, do you feel like so often people are just caught up in just how quickly life can go all the time to kind of forget that maybe we are supposed to kind of like change and evolve and kind of learn? Like, because I feel like a lot of people tend to kind of get stuck.
Yeah.
And then I feel like that honestly plays back into like the fulfillment thing. Like when you're not getting fulfillment. You're not doing things that bring you joy.
Yeah.
And you're just kind of going, which I understand sometimes we have to. But I think it does go hand in hand with the mental health side of things, of like, if we're just kind of getting stuck in the exact same thing, we're not trying new things. We're not embracing the change. We're not learning new things to carry into a new chapter. Like,
yeah. I mean, change is like really uncomfortable, right? And that I think it's like three assurances in life: death, taxes, change. Like, change is really uncomfortable. And so it's like, it's going to happen. But I think, I don't want to speak for everyone, but in my life, like when I sensed something starting to change within me and I resisted it, that is when like anxiety and depression in my life would kind of like bubble up more, because change was happening inevitably for me. And if I resisted it, then it kind of felt like I wasn't being true to myself. And I was like fearful of like the next iteration of who I was becoming, or who maybe God wanted me to become, or like who other people needed me to be, or just like what I wanted to do. And so like being fearful of that change, being fearful of that evolution, or iteration of me, I think plays down from like an identity standpoint. And so I don't know if other people struggle with that. I'm sure they do. But to me, I think what that does is it communicates how to do relationships better, to understand that we all are going to like change and evolve and grow and do different things and like different things and be interested in different things and change emotionally, go through different seasons of hurt and trauma and healing and different things like that. My wife and I, had friends of a couple of ours gave us advice when we first got married and said, you're never going to be married to the same person ever again. Because like individually we're all changing, like we're all going to be interested and do different things, and then you're going to become moms and dads and business owners and take new jobs and do different things and experience different hurt and go to a new therapist or like whatever. You're never going to be married to the same person. And most of the times in like a relationship, even with ourselves, it's easier and comfier to like stay with the same person. Like I'm comfy now in this season where I want to be. I want to stay here. But as the days and years and seasons go on, like I know something's going to happen where it's going to change. Same thing with the relationship. And so I think like that just helps us better understand people and give them grace and share empathy with them and compassion with them, because we know that they are maybe battling the same things that we're battling, or fearful of the same things about change that we are. And so, yeah, I don't know. Maybe everyone struggles with that. I certainly do.
Yeah,
for sure.
No, I love that. I also love, like, you gave this amazing answer and you were like, yeah, maybe, I don't know. Like, no, that was, you made that make total sense. Trust me. Something I would love to dig into. I want to time travel a little bit. Have you always thought like this? Have you always been like, growing up, were you a relatively positive kid? Were you raised in like a positive kind of reinforcement environment? Was it opposite? Like, and I guess I don't even know, like, where did you grow up? Are you from Columbus?
Yeah, no, I'm originally from Iowa.
Okay.
And so, what brought me out here, I played baseball in college. I ended up at Ashland University, just an hour north of Columbus here. That's where I met my wife and everything. And so it was kind of like fateful there. But yeah, no, I don't know. I just always kind of, I felt like I was just growing. I was just a walking, talking identity crisis growing up, honestly. Because I was pretty gifted in athletics and I did well in school and I was in like National Honor Society and Student Senate. But I was like, maybe I had this complex of like, man, other people like don't think I'm supposed to be smart. And then I also like poetry, i.e. Ralph Waldo Emerson, but no one knew that about me growing up. And it was like a part of me kind of like staying hidden. But then like, I always had like questions spiritually and we didn't grow up in like a religious home or anything like that. And so I would always say like I was very like introspective and curious like growing up, and I didn't know if anything that I was doing was like the real me or I was just like projecting. I was like, well, I'm supposed to be good at sports. Well, I'm supposed to be good in the classroom. Well, I'm supposed to not be taking art classes. I really like pottery, but am I supposed to be doing that? Like I'm like the running back on the football team. You know what I'm saying? So I was like, man, I kind of like drawing or sketching or all these different things. And so like I was, like I said, like a walking, talking identity crisis. And so I think what that did was that helped me question who I was more, but it also like, it was a struggle because like that in itself like spurred on a lot of like anxiety and depression. When I was in 7th grade, I was diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. My uncle passed away from like a sudden cardiac arrest, and he was like a father figure to me, and that was kind of like a tipping point and a trigger point for me and like my mental health and stuff, and I struggled throughout the years with that. Started taking medication and therapy and doing all these things, and honestly being ashamed of it because again, I was like the strong jock, smart dude, not like supposed to be crying in bathrooms at my high school, you know? And so like really, really struggled with that. I ended up going to college playing baseball, and I graduate. I get done with my college baseball career, and I'm driving home. Get home, my mom greets me. Usually she says like, gives me a hug, I love you, glad you're home, blah, blah, blah. This time she said, you need to get tested for the heart condition. The year before she was struggling with her heart, she had collapsed and all these different things, came back to, had a defibrillator implanted, and then we found out that it just ran in our family. My uncle had passed away from the same heart condition that she was struggling with. And then the doctor started putting like 2 and 2 together. I get tested for the heart condition and I have it. So a month of testing goes by. They say it's progressed to like a pretty serious rate. I have to get a defibrillator implanted right away. And so I was 23 years old when that happened. And so like seventh grade Zach to 23-year-old Zach was still like trying to discover who I am, and also dealing with like these tremendous moments of trauma within my own just general anxiety and depression and suicidal ideation. I'm not going to shy away from that. And so yeah, it's like that I have not always been hopeful. I've not always been like really purposeful. I've not always been really like joyful. I think like the things that we're doing now are almost reminders to me that like life is supposed to be this way. Like it's supposed to be joyful. It's supposed to be filled with hope. It's supposed to be filled with purpose and fulfillment and relationship and like healthy community. Because maybe those things were missing from my life because of the internal battles that I was facing and some external battles within my own heart condition and trauma and surgery and dealing with that as well. And so, yeah, it's like a direct line that had mental health like throughout it all, that forced me to be just introspective and curious, or else I don't know what else would happen.
Yeah. So in that time frame, you know, it's already difficult for all of us through like teenage years and all this sort of stuff to just figure out who we are. We're changing. We're doing all these things, like trying to figure out what we're interested in. And then also the ever looming like weight of real world is like right over the horizon of like, okay, when we get to high school and then we got to figure out college, or we got to figure out jobs, we got to do all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Walk me through, like, because, you know, you said that like that is, a time frame where a lot of those negative emotions did begin to pop up and at least, give you some battles to deal with through there. What is going through your head during those times? Like, is it at first like, I'm just a kid and I'm feeling pretty weird and I guess I got diagnosed with this thing. So like, was that diagnosis like an answer for you of clarity, or were you like, is there like, because I think as a kid we can hear that and be like, is there something wrong with me?
Yeah, no, I think it was that. I know it was that. And any diagnosis or any like moment that I've had, I have felt tremendous shame with. Like the diagnosis of anxiety disorder, that led to just a lot of shame and having to like keep that hidden from people. And that experience has inspired what we're doing with Scatter Joy. It's like, don't keep it hidden. Like, let's talk about it. Like, let's shed some light on it and like have really healthy conversation with it. but like every moment led to shame. And I think like there is no version of you. And I think what I've realized throughout that, whether it's the anxiety, whether it's a mistake that I've made in a relationship, whether it's the heart condition and defibrillator, like those all gave me tremendous shame, but there is no version of me that is 100%. There's no best version of me that I can shame myself into being. You know, like shame doesn't like make you better. Shame never makes you better. Shame never makes you level up. Shame never makes you more thoughtful. There has to be like this turning point where it takes other people that come into your life, and it takes you to be courageous to open up about those feelings, where a shift starts to happen and you start to experience like just like more like not like overtly positive, like not overt like positivity, but like just more thoughtfulness. And like I said, more like intuition and curiosity and intentionality and stuff like that in your life. And so honestly, man, I'm just like really grateful for the people that like I was surrounded with during every single one of those moments, where it wasn't like a moment where it was like an answer or like anything like that. It was a moment of like deep sorrow and pain and shame, where people like inserted themselves into my life, where I didn't have to ask for help. People were just like, I'm here. And I think that's a big difference between like anytime a tragedy happens in someone's individual life and something that I've tried to shift in my own life when supporting people is not say like, hey, thinking and praying about you. I say, what do you need? You know, or like I just show up. I try to. I don't knock it out of the park or bat 1,000 every single time, but I think there's a big difference. And I'm really grateful for the people that just like inserted themselves into my life when they knew that I was struggling, instead of saying like, hey, let me know what I can do, or like I'm praying for you, or different things like that. Like the insertion and the pushiness and the love and kindness, like the action saved me in those moments too.
Yeah. So now was that family members? Was that mom? Was that friends? Was that like dad? What?
Yeah. My mom was pivotal in that. Friends, coaches, different things like that. I think like, again, it's like anytime that you're not like acting in your normal self, or like anytime like someone understands like the pain that you're going through, or the diagnosis, or the moment in time where that you're struggling with, to be able to like just be there and be present and ask questions and do those things. Like, yeah, those were pivotal relationships, my mom and friends and coaches for sure.
So you're getting these support systems. You've got support by people actively like noticing that you're dealing with these things. The older you get, do you find like a better, and I'm talking like high school into college years, are you finding ways at that point in time to like, hey, I feel like I've got a better balance on it? Or is it now that the weight of the world is starting to settle in on your shoulders like it does for all of us, are you finding deeper struggles that you're facing at that point in time? Or
yeah, I think as I got older, the problems that I had combined with like the future looming decisions that I had to make in my life, and like the adulthood that I was about to enter into, I think were kind of like weight of the world on my shoulders kind of vibe. And so, especially with the diagnosis of like the heart condition and everything too, the thing about that is like there's a lot of people that have like health diagnosis in their life, like whether they're a cancer survivor or like anything, that diagnosis becomes a part of you. It does. And that's part of your identity. And I think for a long time, like I was trying to like detach myself from that with me. And I think what I needed to do is embrace that. And I think the thing on the backside of the struggle is like, as I was coming out of college, I'm dealing with all of that, plus the diagnosis, plus the life-threatening heart condition, plus the defibrillator, plus the surgery, plus the alteration of my life that I have to go through from like a physicality standpoint. And there were more like questions and answers. And for me, that was like a really deep struggle. I did deal with like suicidal ideation at that time. I remember in grad school, one night just like laying down after a night out and just like staring at the stars for I don't know how many hours, but like trying to like wrestle with myself and God of like kind of playing like the why me game. And I think again, like feeling shameful about like what I was having to go through, and really trying to find some sort of semblance of like balance in my life and answers in my life and like the light at the end of the tunnel. And I think a lot of times people like go through a certain struggle, whether it's like a mental health struggle, they overcome and come out of the darkness of suicidal ideation. They come out and they're cancer free. They overcome trauma in their life, and everyone kind of gets the painted picture of like joy and happiness and hopefulness and different things. But that has just, it has created strength in my life, and it has created hope in my life, and it has created joy in my life, all those things. But I think it's going to always, like I said, be a part of me and something that like I'll go back to, continue to learn from, continue to wrestle with negative emotions with, and different things like that. I had more anxiety about that aspect of my life than any other decision at that moment. And I think it was honestly because it was like a fresh revelation of like identity crisis again, of like, well, who is this version of myself going to be? Mm-hmm. What is this version of myself going to like do and act like and move forward? It was a moment of like tremendous stickiness, and it felt like it lasted forever.
Yeah. As those moments tend to do, is when you're in the thick of it, you're sitting and you're saying, okay, like I don't think this is going to be forever, but this is taking an awful long time. Yeah. This is taking an awful long time to kind of like trudge through right now.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing in those moments is like, again, community. And it's not even just like individuals, but finding yourself in some sort of semblance of community that you can almost like lose yourself in. And for me, I was a graduate assistant baseball coach at the time at the same university that I just graduated undergrad from, and being able to pour into those guys in like a baseball standpoint and a leadership standpoint and a mentorship standpoint, that like slowly like cleared the fog in my life, I think. And so I had a mentor say this to me one time, and I'll never forget it, but he said, you can't go wrong getting your eyes off of yourself. And so anytime you feel like you're dealing with some sort of struggle, some sort of trauma, something happened in your life in a negative way, it's so easy to get caught up on yourself, and it's so easy to look at your situation. It's so easy to try and like dissect it and solve it and do all these things. And it's that is needed. Like we should be introspective. We should be aware of like our pain points and different things and what we're going through. But like the road to healing is like yes and it's like inward, outward. And so like again, it goes back to like there's strength in my story, there's hope in helping other people. Like I think we have to have that kind of community where like yes, people are pouring into me, but like it's almost like this karma effect of like I need to get my eyes off myself and like pour into these people, maybe in a completely different way, maybe in a completely different aspect, but that's going to come back to me, and it's going to kind of clear the fog, and it's going to kind of help me see the light at the end of the tunnel and be a little more hopeful. Mm-hmm. That was the secret sauce. And I think it is for anyone like really, really struggling, is you get in those sticky moments and you get there, like you stay there too long without shifting gears and I don't want to use the word like purpose because it's like super trendy, but like just like selfless, like acting in a selfless way. Mm-hmm. I think selflessness cures loneliness. And when you're dealing with really dark traumatic times, you automatically feel lonely because it's your story and you feel stuck in it. And even though other people have dealt with the same things, you're like, you still feel lonely. It's weird. Like, there's so many people dealing with mental health stuff, but everyone that deals with mental health stuff feels lonely. It's so odd.
It is, yeah.
But selflessness cures loneliness. I really believe that, because what selflessness does is it gets you around other people, and it gets your heart and your mind off of your own story that you're walking through. And so if we can all act like that, and that's one of the things that we're trying to do with Scatter Joy. It's like, we think loneliness, hopelessness, selfishness are kind of gasoline on the fire of our mental health like crisis right now going on. And so it's like, man, how do you inspire people to act selflessly, scatter joy, and grow in community?
Yeah. Well, like, even I feel like a big thing that I have uncovered recently is that, like, selfless and selfishness, and finding that positive way of being selfish, of working on ourselves, so we can better fill our cup up. So then when our cup is full, we are then able to turn that immediately into the selflessness. And pour into others. Yeah, I've heard so many people say that over the years, and I've even said that too. I had a friend actually kind of give me this image in my mind, and I know it's a fine balance of like, yeah, I need to do things that fill me up, and I need to do things that are like self-care and all these different things. But he painted a picture in my mind that was like so kind of like groundbreaking to me. It was almost like a pyramid of like cups, and he said like, man, if I pour enough of myself into this cup, it's going to overflow back into mine. And so it's almost like at that point, if I'm doing it like super generously, really selflessly, no motives involved, just doing it out of like the kindness of my heart and soul, then that is an act of self-care. Yeah. Oh yeah, exactly. You know what I'm saying? It's like, man, it's like both things at the same time. And I think that's when people feel like they're in their sweet spot and they're like at their healthiest, and when they're growing and changing and like evolving as humans and evolving as people, evolving as a community. Can you imagine if people acted in that way? It's like, man, an act of selflessness is actually an act of self-care for me. Exactly. And that's exactly what I mean when I say that. Yeah. It's like, yeah, of course, we're all going to take time for ourselves. We're all going to focus on making sure that, you know, we're doing the self-care things. Yeah. But that's where like the magic is like figuring out like, wow, when I do selfless acts, when I help somebody else, when I sit and talk to somebody else, whatever, that fills me up. And then that in turn is a version of self-care. Yeah. And of course, not everybody's like this, but I've identified I'm 100% like that. Yep. Like when I am maybe feeling down, like I have learned that, you know, if I'm having like a down period or something where I'm just feeling like low energy, feeling a little bummed, you know, whatever it is. And even if there's not something directly making me feel that way, I will make sure to have a meeting with somebody, get coffee with somebody, hang out with somebody, like whatever, to spark that sort of like real connector conversation. Yeah. And there doesn't have to be a result of it. It's not, oh, and now you're going and achieving all these goals, or you're giving me this thing when I walk away. It's even a little bit of that gift thing earlier, right? Yeah. It's like sitting down with a person, having a really good conversation, that is letting me dip into my gift. Oh, that's so good. So then when and it literally has become a form of self-care for me, is just when I'm feeling down, having a conversation with somebody, spending time, because I also... Wow. Big fan of like actual like one-on-one time with people. Mm-hmm. And like quality time is like the one love language, like the top one for me, right? And I've identified that like that helps me in those moments. Yeah, it's so just good. Sitting, I don't need that person to be like, here's how you can change your life, I'll solve this for you or whatever. The act of that quality time, the act of that conversation, I most often can leave those conversations being like, wow, okay, that filled my cup up. Yeah. You know what I mean? That added to my cup. It didn't solve all my problems, just as I probably didn't solve all that person's problems. But that moment that we share in that moment in time, and that energy that we share, there's something to that. That's and so then good. I get to walk away with that feeling like, wow, you know what? Again, my problems aren't solved. They're still there. But I feel much clearer about them. I feel weight off of my shoulders about them. Whether the conversation is about those issues or not, it's still everything that you're saying. Yep. It's connecting with somebody else in that way. that becomes, and even if that conversation, like, I'll even say this, like, even if that conversation I'm having with that person is 97% about them and what they're going through, the act of getting to talk them through that stuff is my self-care.
Well, dude, it's like, I've never thought of it that way, but it's so simple. It's like, man, when I'm feeling down or stuck or in pain or sorrow or shameful or guilty or anything like that, it's like, well, what's the best thing for me to do is like tap into my gifts, like tap into my strengths, like make me feel a little bit more like myself. Dude, that is gold. That is gold.
And that's, again, like, it comes from like me, like, genuinely, like, I will tell you the barring details, I'll tell you the story. You know, the last handful of months of 2022, I was in probably one of the worst mental and emotional places I've ever been in my entire life. Talking about suicidal thoughts, absolutely there. Prominent. Very, very prominent. And eventually, like, you know, figuring out, okay, what do I need to do to try and get myself through this and all this sort of stuff. But it was support of close people to me.
Yeah.
Of course, being a support system, like talking about the things that I'm dealing with and going through. But when I was starting to get on the other side of that feeling and starting to feel a little bit more of my normal, the thing that really kicked everything into gear was, like, there was one solid conversation with one of my best friends. And yes, we were talking about all the stuff that I was dealing with, but they opened up about a bunch of stuff that they were dealing with.
Yeah.
So then I got to turn my gift back on because it was lost for a couple months because I had no like awareness of it almost, right?
Yeah.
I feel like I completely disassociated from who I was for a few months.
Yeah.
And just completely lost the emotional drive for anything, which means I don't have the mental capacity for anything, right? But it was that moment that I got to share and connect with that person that then reignited that spark in me of like, wait, it's everything you've been saying up to this point.
Yeah.
I can bear the gift of having dealt with these things. And now what are ways that I can help somebody else with that? And it's not just like, oh my God, I have to give 100% of myself to this thing.
Yep.
It wasn't about that. It was, we're just having a real conversation. And the cliche of like, just get it off your chest, I believe is a very true cliche.
Yeah.
I think there's tons of power in just talking about things rather than holding them in.
Yeah.
So of course that's a part of it. But at the end of the conversation, I realized I helped them just as much as they helped me. So it's like, I might be leaving the conversation saying, maybe I don't want to die.
Yeah.
And in turn, they were too.
Yeah. It's like, there's tremendous magic in two words, me too, you know? Mm-hmm. It's like when someone opens up about something and it's like met with acceptance on the other side, not even just acceptance, but like also like the courage to be vulnerable on the other side of someone else. That's really powerful. I think like that's the spark of healing. Mm-hmm. Honestly, it's not even the getting the story off of your chest. It's that on the backside of it. It's like getting connected to people that have struggled with the same things or struggling with things that are similar, and like the acceptance of your story, like being shared. That I think is, to steal your word before, like that's when magic starts to happen. Like that's when magic starts to happen in your life, and you can start to like get to the other side of like whatever you're dealing with. It doesn't happen instantly, but then what that conversation probably did is it unlocked a lot of different opportunities for you to sit down with that same person and kind of like check in with them. Yep. Again, it's like getting your eyes off of yourself. You can never go wrong. And so if you probably look at anyone's success story from a personal struggle, trauma, mental health, suicidal ideation, it has everything to do with that, honestly.
Yeah.
There's some part of their story where they were met by someone that said, I struggle with that too. And I'm still struggling with it. And here's what we can do together to get out of it.
Yeah. It's just sometimes the act of just being heard as well, you know, because we can say things. We can, oh man, I'm going through this right now. It's so crazy. Oh, that's crazy, bro. All right. You know, like whatever. Right. Yep. But I think the idea of truly being heard and listened to.
Yeah.
And I don't even think those types of conversations, like a deep life talk or something, I don't even think they're necessarily about finding a solution at the end of them. Mm-hmm. I literally think it's about getting it off your chest, but somebody else accepting it and hearing what you're saying.
Yeah.
because you can walk away having a much clearer mind. You might not walk away with, all I have to do is this, and this feeling goes away.
Yeah,
that never happens, right? But I think that there's, again, at least for me and my experiences, like there is so much power in just talking about those things and also hearing someone else in whatever they're going through. And it doesn't have to be some major thing. But I think you said this earlier, just like there's so much power in community and just hearing each other and being there for other people. And I also think that like our version of being there for people doesn't always have to be in moments of crisis.
Yeah.
I think being there for people can just be kind of a casual, consistent thing.
Yeah, it's just like regularly loving people.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's huge. I think that's why, community can look a lot different for a lot of different people. Like there's personal community, there's professional community. And so like that's why we're trying to point people to therapy as much as we can, because we truly believe in it from like a personal standpoint and organizational standpoint, because that person is able to like just sit, listen, hear you, dissect things, wrestle through things, give you tools to take home, give you advice, all these things from an unbiased opinion. And so that is a form of community. That's a form of one-on-one community that I think all of us need too. And it's like, we almost view it as like a coach. I come from like an athletic background and stuff. And so it's like, man, I had coaches in my life that made me better baseball players, made me a better football player, like all these different things and stuff. And it's like, well, why wouldn't I want that just in my like regular life? Like, why wouldn't I want a coach in my life that like makes me better mentally and emotionally?
Yeah.
And it's like, I think if we kind of like shift how we like looked at mental health care in that way, I think a lot of us would maybe go kind of rid ourselves from the stigma. I think a lot of our fighting the stigma of mental health is like fighting the stigma around the getting help part too. I think a lot of people are talking about mental health more than they ever have, and it's freaking amazing, dude. It's awesome. But what we're seeing is like there's a halt within like talking about it and getting help. And it might be the search, it might be the cost, it might be the stigma, but whatever we do, we need to help people jump over those. And I think it is about shifting the perspective of the way we look at that kind of relationship, that kind of community, because there's tremendous benefit to that. It's not going to see someone because you're weak. It's going to see someone because you want to be stronger.
Yep. 100%.
So it's a huge difference.
Yep. 1,000,000%. Like that is something I have implemented into my life.
Yeah.
Finally, after years and years of, again, contemplating it, is therapy. And because I didn't look at it in like a negative light, but I was just like, oh man, I don't know, like that, it feels kind of weird. Like I love talking to people, but how are they really going to be looking at it? Are they really going to listen to what I'm saying? Or are they just going to be kind of looking for a diagnosis?
And am I going to like vibe with them? Like, am I going to like them? Are they going to like me? Am I going to get a weird feeling?
Exactly.
I think like a lot of therapy is also like dating.
Oh yeah, 100%. You got to figure out like what works.
Who is it? Like, who do I match with and stuff? And so I think like trying to walk with people through that and kind of like rid that expectation that like maybe the first therapist or counselor that you go see might not be the perfect fit for you, or maybe the fifth one is, but like to be able to keep trying. Just because you had a bad experience with the barista at Starbucks, I guarantee you've gone back. You know what I'm saying?
Right, yeah.
And so like, man, let's keep trying it out because it's that important.
Yep. And I can 100% sit and say now, like, oh man, I wish I would have did this earlier. Like, it's something I look forward to now,
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned like the coaching analogy and comparison and all that sort of stuff. You mentioned earlier that you've done some life coaching for a little bit of time. Tell me what that was like. Like, how does that even begin? And maybe we're jumping too far into the timeline because the last time we left off was like college stuff.
Yeah.
But like that is a fascinating thing to me, is the idea of a life coach. So walk me through, like, how did that start for you?
Yeah. So for me, I was always in athletics. I'd always had coaches, and I was a coach. Like, I was a graduate assistant baseball coach, and then I worked. I got my undergrad degree and my graduate degrees in like kinesiology, exercise science. And so I was always around like sports performance training, and I was coaching people within the weight room and on fields and different things like that. But I moved down to Columbus in 2014, and I took a job at the Wellington School, and I was working in their athletic department. I was a strength and conditioning coach, but I was also teaching some leadership classes too. And I was there for 4 years, and around year 3, I kind of like started to wrestle with my heart a little bit of like, man, I really enjoy what I'm doing, but I think I want to coach people in different ways than just like physically. And there is like a physical component to like mental and emotional health. Like it's all connected. It's like this table that we're sitting at. It's like there's 4 legs: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. If you added a 5th one, it's relational and stuff. And so it's like those are all intermingled, and they all like connect with each other. If one's weak, then the table's not going to hold as strong, and so you have to strengthen that one. And so I just felt like the tug of my heart that I wanted to like really focus on like the social emotional learning side of things. And so got around mentors and different coaches in that regard, and just started to walk alongside them, whether it was like them going to do keynotes or different things like that, learning from them on what they do. And kind of took the plunge first doing like physical training with like the emotional mental stuff, and then kind of like all in with like the social emotional mental health learning and guiding and different things like that. And yeah, it was a lot of fun because you get to just do this. Like you get to sit down and like hear their stories, talk to them, redefine values, redefine relationships within their lives, give them tools and advice from other things to kind of implement to hopefully like work towards a better version of themselves. And so I think it was just that transitional period of like, yeah, I'm coaching people probably in this way already from like an athletic standpoint. Like, can I just shift the perspective of who I am again and grow in this way and kind of take this plunge from that sense. And so that led to me just like one-on-one coaching with people that were going through like career changes or like relationship struggles or different things like that. And then I started like traveling, speaking at schools about social emotional learning and doing workshops and stuff. And I love it. I still do. Don't do like one-on-one life coaching anymore with like Scatter Joy. Like I think now with Scatter Joy, like we kind of want to be the point guard, you know, like we want to distribute the ball and like make sure people get to the right people and professionals to do that stuff and take those steps. But I think it was really important for me to like have that role in my life to understand like getting people to that kind of help and that kind of need, whether it's therapy, counseling, life coaching, support groups, different things like that, is tremendously needed. And it needs to be invested in.
Yeah. That, like, I'm even asking those things out of curiosity because like that is where I'm at in life right now, is being able to, you know, a lot of what you've explained, you know, and a lot of this is like being able to kind of like look back at my experiences, look back at the things that I've dealt with, lived through, you know, all this sort of stuff. And also then balancing that out with what do you like doing for others? What do you like to, I'm 100% like kind of trying to accept that label of a life coach, if I'm being honest. Like that is something I've uncovered about myself that like genuinely another kind of like a little bit of like a ego battle where like for years I've known about life coaches, like listened to a ton, like I've sat down with some, but I would still always be like, oh man, like what is a life coach? Like,
yeah.
I
like,
can't
what is it? It's like this mythical creature. Like, what do they even do?
Like, what does a life coach really do? Like, you know, I walk around and after like years and years of just accepting more of who I am, how I want to be to people, I get told all the time, people are like, you're like basically a life coach. Like you're life coaching right now. And like, I am literally in that moment in time where I'm like, I think that is a kind of next evolution of me. Yeah. Of accepting that label and being like, you know what? Why don't I do something intentional with that? Yeah. Why don't I take this perfect purpose and take that gift and do something intentional with it? Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's like if enough people are like seeing that in you, that's right. Kind of like a telltale sign of like, oh, maybe like I should pay attention to that.
Yeah. Because it's, you know, like we were talking about earlier, it's not just the idea of like, oh, I'm having a rant session with friends, and it's also not the idea of like, I have all the perfect answers. It's just being there for somebody in that moment. Yeah. And understanding how, honestly, I think there's a lot of value in how to have an unbiased perspective on what's happening. Yeah. Having enough of that like direct communication with somebody of like, hey, I'm not going to say something to make it worse. Yep. But we can identify like maybe maybe this is an issue. How do we think we can get past that? What do we think we can do to move past that? And just being that support system for somebody. I even love, like, even just sitting and chatting with you about that, because that is something that, like, again, for years I've been like, oh man, like I like this life coaching thing, but like it doesn't really, it almost feels like it just feels almost trendy and buzzwordy in a way. That's what goes through my mind, even though I know the value of it. Yeah. Even though I'm sitting and I'm like, oh yeah, anybody I've talked to who's a life coach or anything, I'm like, yeah, this is incredible. But there is that, like, that battle of like, oh man, if I start calling myself a life coach, like, what's somebody gonna think? But then it's just also sitting and being like, that doesn't really matter.
But what's it matter?
Yeah, that doesn't really matter, does it?
Yeah, I think a really good way to, like, explain it to people, like, whether they are in a leadership role, in a coaching role, a life coach, trying to, like, think about getting a life coach. I think a really good way to explain life coaching is, like, they're just going to sit down. I think the really good ones sit down and they ask a lot of questions. They speak about 20% of the time. You speak about 80% of the time. Because I think my belief is that, like, you have the answers to the questions that you're asking yourself.
Yep.
And you just need someone in your life to kind of guide you. It's almost like guide rails on, like, a road or a highway. And it's like, okay, we're at this mile marker now, like, let's go this way. Okay, we're at this exit now, let's go this way. And asking questions along the way to help you better make decisions and see the answers that you've kind of been wrestling with the questions that you're wrestling with in your life too. I think, like, great leaders, great coaches, they ask really, really great questions, and they know where to take the conversation, and they kind of see different things and stuff. And so I think anyone kind of, like, curious about even therapy, counseling, it's the same thing. Like, what they want to do, the good ones, what they want to do is they want to guide you to the answers that you kind of can create for yourself. I don't think the good coaches, the good therapists, the good counselors are just going to, like, have you in, hear all your problems, and then tell you what to do. The great ones want to, like, ask questions, get deeper with you, kind of ask the, like, 5 levels of why you think that or why you behave in that way, and get to the deepest root of, like, the trauma moment or memory that kind of created that kind of mindset or behavior or question in your life, and then help you, like, pivot it and help you, like, see it from a different perspective. And so I think that's, like, it flips the script, and it almost is like a tremendous adventure. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, I want to do that. Like, I want to, like, go down that road and just see, like, what my life could be like. For some people, it's like this really scary moment, but, like, any great adventure has this moment of fear. And so I think that's a great way to kind of, like, pivot. And then also, like, to make sure that you're, like, with the right person from, like, a professional level. It's like, if you maybe don't feel like people are doing that for you in that professional relationship, then maybe try a different one. Because I think that literally, for me at least, from coaches that I've had, therapists that I've had, and coaching that I've done, that's, like, the secret sauce, man. It's like asking the questions to help the other people discover the gold that is already inside of them and the answer that's already inside of them.
Yeah. Well, I think it's like, this is a silly comparison, but I feel like it's like the Wizard of Oz idea. Yeah. Like, that was, like, my favorite movie as a kid.
Yeah.
And I feel like in a way that was kind of always ingrained in me. Like, what you wanted, you had in you the entire time.
Yeah.
Right. And that's it. It's exactly the same thing. Like, hey, we have these tools in us. Sometimes it might take a lot of digging to find it, but it's there.
Yep.
Now, like, in the experience of life coaching, like, how did that feel for you to do that? To, like, really intentionally be able to give back to people?
Yeah, I personally struggle with shouldering people's burdens. And so, like, in that relationship as a life coach, I would bring a lot of stuff home from meetings or conversations or sessions with people. And after life coaching, I worked at a local church here in Columbus for 2 years. And it was kind of the same thing, like, pastoring people. It's like you're dealing with not only your own burdens and your own struggles and stuff in life, but you're also, like, really dealing with other people's too, in a way that it's just extra heavy, you know, because you never know what someone's going through until they start opening up about it. And so I honestly really struggle with that. Like, for the longest time, I couldn't like kind of decompartmentalize and like kind of like shield myself from bringing that home and thinking about it like 24/7. And it caused like extra, I think, just weight to my life. But it was like really fun to do it. Like, it was really fun to like think about like other people's stories, and it still is. Like, you still, I mean, running the Scatter Joy Project, you hear tremendously heavy stories about people dealing with real life things, like life-saving moments or like life-ending moments, and it's heavy stuff. And I think what I'm trying to learn is like to support but not shoulder, you know? Totally. And I think that's what I struggled with in that season when I was like life coaching and pastoring, is like, man, I was trying to like just throw everyone on my shoulder and say like, this is the way, even though I was taking the approach of like asking questions, getting to know it deeper, but I was like still trying to be like, I got you. And that weighed on me, that weighed on my relationships and different things like that, my mental health, my emotional health. And I think there's a difference between like putting your arm around someone or throwing them on your back. And all they need you to do is just put an arm around them. And if they're tired, you just stop and sit with them. You know? Yep. It's like, maybe there's a season where you pick them up and carry them, but most of the time they just need an arm. And so that's something that I'm still trying to learn.
Yeah. You know what's interesting is like, I feel like in a different way, I learned that through like freelance creative work. Because for years, I would attach my heart and my soul to the work that I was doing for somebody. Yeah. And I would care astronomical amounts about their project, which sure, that's great. It's not a bad thing. Yeah. But just like you're saying, that was with me at all times. You know, so if I shot a commercial for somebody or a music video for somebody or something, and like they didn't use it in the way that I could see it being used, I was like, oh God, like it was a failure. So it's not worth it, blah, blah, blah. Rather than like, well, that was just their decision to do with it what they would after we filmed it. And that's that, right? Yeah. But I would also like, it doesn't even, not necessarily relating to just like the release of something, but like the entire process. I would just sit and I would just give so much of my energy, so much of my creative output to these things, to these people, these companies, these brands, like whatever it is for their projects. And I was always leaving super drained. Yeah. And I was always sitting with it at home while I'm not even doing the project. I would say like, I wish that project would have went better and blah, blah, blah. And yeah. I wish we should have filmed it like this or blah, blah. And it's like, man, like, especially with stuff like that is more of like a creative service that's being provided. It's like, just, you got to do the thing, do it to the best of your ability. Yeah. And it doesn't have to take up more of your universe. Yeah. It's like the whole, like, done is better than perfect thing. Yeah. And it's like, I could also identify that it's like, we all have our own like different skills and all that sort of stuff. And like, I will confidently sit and be like, visually, I know that like my done sometimes might be better than someone else's perfect. Yeah. And so then I don't need to raise the bar and try and change the game. Yeah. Because I already know the amount of like heart and passion and care that I'm putting into the thing that I'm doing. Yeah. So what I would always do is like punish myself for not making that even more. Like, yeah, you might give level 10 worth of passion for this, but why don't you get level 12? Yeah. Why don't you give level 15? Yeah, you like guilt yourself into that. Yeah. Yep. And so like I feel like I learned a similar lesson, but from like a creative business aspect. That's where good. I realized like I drain myself because I'm attaching my heart and soul to these things. So nowadays I can sit and again, I'm going to give like absolutely every amount of energy that is needed for the project, but I'm not going to exceed that because no one's asking me to. Yeah. And I don't have to force myself to exceed that. Yeah. And you know, it's like the saying of, you know, like, if you wake up one day and you're not feeling 100%, right? You're feeling 40%. And 40% is all you can give for that day. Well, you didn't give 40%. You gave your 100% for that day. Yep. So it doesn't matter. And I think that like I know I'm like trying to relate like the mental health thing with the business thing
No,
here,
it's
but like
so good.
I think they play hand in hand in the execution part, because again, I would sit and like my 100% doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah.
My 100% can be the 40% that this person is asking of me.
Yep.
And if I meet them where they are rather than wanting them to raise their bar just because I do, we still get to the end of it. We still create, we still solve the problem.
Yep.
And so, yeah, in turn, like I feel like that's how I learned that lesson was from all the freelance stuff.
Yeah,
Like,
I think there's probably a lot of people that like struggle with that. Like even from a friend standpoint, like you were talking about, like when you were dealing with your mental health season a couple years ago, and you were dealing with suicidal ideation, you went to a friend. Well, we go to friends because they're trusted, and sometimes like you are the trusted friend. And you're not like in this professionally, you're not a therapist, you're not a counselor, you're not a life coach, you're not doing these things to like earn money, you're just doing these things out of like the love of that person. And sometimes even then it's harder because you love that person so deeply as a friend or a family member to let go of like the shouldering of their burden and not just like walk with them and support them. And so I think like it's something that probably a lot of people are trying to navigate right now, especially after the season that we just went through with the pandemic and everything. And so, yeah, it's just like, I don't know how to do it really well, besides like trying to shift the perspective of like what you're taking it from a creative standpoint is like, well, done is better than perfect. Well, knowing that the conversation can't be perfect or anyone's life can't be perfect, like all I can do is support.
Yeah.
And I know if I like being aware of like when I need to pick them up, when I need to just put an arm around them, I think that is like everyone's dance that we're trying to figure out right now. And I don't know if anyone hits it out of the park.
Yeah, no, I think it's everything we're saying, that there is no perfect way to do any of this, right?
I think that's what makes like these mental health conversations hard, because you're like, you kind of always walk away from a conversation and you're probably like, man, maybe I should have said this, or I hope they didn't take this way. If you're on like the listening side of things. Or maybe I should have said more. Maybe I shouldn't have said all of that, like all these different things. And then if you're on like the giving side of things, where you're just like word vomiting all your emotion and like your story and everything that you're trying to wrestle with, you're like, gosh, did I overshare? Did they even care? Like all these different things. And you walk away from those situations with the heaviness. Sometimes I feel like almost like, gosh, was that good enough? And that's like the perfectionism in us, or like, I just think it's really hard. Like it's really hard. And that's why, again, it's like friends, family members, but then also professionals. And then also crisis text line. And then also suicide hotline. And all these different resources and all these different forms of community, because you need that, the multiplication of community. Like, I saw one time it was like illustrated like just like rings. It almost looked like a target. And it's like, well, your first community is like with yourself, or like God, or whatever religion or like you believe in. And then it's like yourself, and then it's your family, then it's your friends, and then it's your like then it's Franklinton, and then it's Columbus, and then it's like Central Ohio, and then it's Ohio, and then it's the United States. You know what I'm saying? It just like continues to go out. I think we can look at that from like an even pinpointed like personal perspective of like, well, maybe this first circle is myself and my relationship with God. Maybe the next one's myself and my relationship with my family. Maybe the next one's myself and my relationship with my 3 closest trusted friends. And then the next one is like myself and my therapist, myself and my support group, myself and my AA group, myself and my counselor. Like, you just kind of keep building that out. And I think to have touch points and real, honest, like conversation within each of those levels of community would be really impactful to do. Not just when you're in the darkest moments, but like proactively.
Yep, 100%.
And so like how I think it would be really interesting to be able to do that and be like, kind of map that. Like what are my levels of community in my life? How do I need to like orchestrate in those ways and have conversations with those people? So
I'm sure you're familiar with the like sum of 5 theory, right?
Maybe. I don't know.
We're the sum of the 5 people that we spend the most time with.
Yeah.
Like, that's always where my head goes with so much of this stuff, like talking about the community piece.
Yeah.
Is because I think we all often can overlook the power of an idea like the sum of 5. Of like, okay, let's just hypothetically say, for example's sake, like the 5 people or things that you ingest the most, right? Or that you communicate with the most. Sometimes I do think there's value in slowing down and trying to reevaluate that of how are these things impacting me? Is my sum of 5 mostly negative, all negative? Is it all positive? Is it mostly like being able to kind of identify those things, I feel like is a thing that we're pretty good at overlooking.
Yeah.
Right? And not that it's like super easy to sit and once a month be like, let me reevaluate my closest friends, right? But I think it doesn't have to be just like physical people. I think it's podcasts you listen to, shows you watch, like whatever it may be. Because I don't know if we all necessarily pay attention to, again, it's the energy thing, right?
Yep.
It's what are you giving energy to the most often? And so then on the flip side, what is maybe taking energy from you the most often? But what's also giving you energy?
Yeah.
What is giving something back for you? Is there a friend who like, you might hang out with and you might talk about some negative stuff or something, but do you leave being like, I'm glad I spent time with them?
Yeah.
That's good, right? It gave me some fulfillment. It gave me some energy. But I think a lot of us can get caught in the like, oh, I have this really one good aspect and then maybe my other 4 are kind of negative.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of power in being able to identify those things. And again, that doesn't mean that the action you can take is to immediately change those super easily.
Right.
Because none of this stuff is an overnight flip of a switch like, well, there we go, everything's different.
Yep.
But I do think there's a lot of power in identifying those things, taking a look at that sum of 5 of like, do these things like, do they fill my cup up?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Do they add value to me? Do they make me feel good? Just in general, does it make me feel good?
Yeah.
Or is it draining me?
It goes back to like just awareness. You know, I think like awareness is king in anything we do, professionally, relationally, mental health wise, like anything. Like we have to be aware of like what is making us the way we are and what is making us the best version of us when we show up, what's making us maybe the not so great version of us, and who those people are and different things. I think that's the whole conversation that we've had. It's like awareness of my past, awareness of my present, awareness of like my future based on decisions that I make, and awareness of my community and awareness of my, habits and different things like that. And so it's just really, really good. I think people create moments, people create mindsets, people create behaviors, and so the sum of 5, I think, rings true for a lot of people. I think a lot of times we might think that, and I am a culprit of this, I'm just like, this is the way I am. This is just who I am. This is like how I'm always going to be, and this is like how I react to these things and all that stuff. And it's like, well, no, like mindsets and behaviors, like maybe we are predisposed to like act with a little more fire or a little more calmness or anything like that, but mindsets and behaviors aren't just like created, they don't just happen, they're like created over time. Mm-hmm. And so there's these like, I don't know what it's called, but I call it like the levels of mindsets and behaviors, where it's like, okay, what's the mindset and behavior that maybe isn't the healthiest, or maybe I would like to change it, and then that is inspired by like the deepest level is like a moment, memory, or trauma. And so in between that is like the mindset and behavior is created by, now I'm drawing a blank, is created by an emotion. That emotion is created by a belief about the world, and that belief about the world is created by a moment, memory, or trauma.
Yeah.
I think I'm missing one, but like you get the gist of like there's things in our lives that happen that we might not like consciously remember or consciously know, that have created a belief about the world within the community that we live in. And then that belief about the world creates an emotion. That emotion inspires action. Mm-hmm. And so like the whole thing of healing is awareness. Awareness has to create action. And so you have to like re-engineer and like reverse that kind of framework of saying like, okay, what behavior am I acting in that I wish I could change? Gosh, I have no idea where that comes from. Well, can you sit down in a journal and say like what emotions you feel when you act in that way? And then the emotions that you feel, like what do you think like the belief about the world creates that emotion? And then the belief about the world, like what was the moment that created that belief about the world, or who instilled that belief about the world in you? Like people create moments. And so yeah, it's just like that work of awareness is something that like I've used in my life to like help me kind of grow aware of like some of my sticking points or some of my things that I would do and then feel that shame, or I would do and feel that guilt, and I would just get stuck in that. And it's brought me like tremendous freedom, something that I've used with like people that I was coaching as well. And so that is like, to me, it's that becoming aware of like those things in your life and doing that work, and then becoming aware of like your values and if you're like acting in alignment with your values. Because sometimes I think, again, similarly to like the mindsets and behaviors, we just like assume we know what we value, and then we just like live our life. But like, do you really know what you value? Like, have you really done that work of like, these are my top 5 values, this is how I define them, and then every decision is based on that. And like living a life that's parallel with that, like there's so much freedom in that. But I think sometimes we're just like, I remember when I was at like a leadership conference in high school, someone was like, one of the speakers, like a breakout session, was like, what are you, like called me out, and I'm trying to like duck it, like not make eye contact, you know? So I was like, I don't want to answer. Calls me out, what are your top 3 values? And I was like, shit, like family and faith and friends. And I was guessing, dude, like I was like, maybe I should assume that these are my values, but these might be adopted values, maybe with adopted definitions that I'm just implementing in my life and like living on autopilot. And it's like, well, no, can you like sit down and be like, my number 1 value is authenticity. Well, what does that even mean? Like, can you define it personally? My number 2 value is adventure. Cool. What's that mean? That's awesome. That is your value. Like, you define it yourself, but what does it mean? And then like live aligned with those 2 like practices. For me personally, I think those are something that anyone can do even without a professional, and gain tremendous freedom within those things, and like walk out of those sessions or walk out of those like journal prompts and different things like that and be like, okay, like what changes do I need to make, you know? And so, sorry, I'm just kind of ranting now because I just love this stuff.
Nope, this is great. This is exactly what this show is made for. Like,
oh man, I love it.
You don't have to cut yourself short. So like even diving back into the timeline, or even just kind of catching us up or filling in any gaps we might have missed, like, is there anything like from like college into life coaching into Scatterjoy? Like, is there anything like major within there that are like, this is a big development part of my life right here that like we should probably touch on? Because I know we sort of jumped all over the place a little bit. But
I love it. That's kind of how I live my life. I just jump all over the place. I've done a lot of different things, but I think they've all like led into what we're doing now with Scatterjoy. It's like coaching athletics and mentoring like young kids and young adults. Like, that's massive, because you don't just learn about like the sports that they're playing and how you can like help them develop into stronger, faster like athletes, but you also like listen and sit with like the breakups that they went through and like the tests that they're stressed about and the family issues that they're going through. And I think that season of like coaching in that sense gave me a lot of clarity on like just the diversity of problems and issues that people face, but then also the similarities of emotions within them. We all might have different stories, but we feel the same things. And so how can you best like overcome those emotions and understand that we're all not that different and all these different things? That was pivotal, and that kind of led into the life coaching thing and speaking and all that stuff. And that led into working at a church and pastoring and working at like a church as a nonprofit and all that stuff. And then launching the Scatterjoy project, kind of out of an idea of like how maybe what might be missing at the church is like amplified resources other than faith-based resources. And so there was a lot of people coming to me at the church that needed professional mental health care, different things like that. And all I had was my personal network and the personal networks of everyone that was working at the church. And so I started to think, man, there has to be resources out there that exist in these ways to like give people more choices and more options, and not just like trusting my word, but like feeling empowered to do their own search, but then also maybe trusting our team's word too, like having those options available. And so that was inspired by that too. And so it all just kind of led, like, you look back on your life and you're just like, man, I am literally in the place at the right time where I'm supposed to be. Like, this is like, to me, this is as close to perfect that you can get. And that's saying a lot, but like, I feel really good about my life right now. And I feel really good about the work that we're doing and the family that we have at home and my wife and our kids, and just like what we're doing professionally and the risks that we're taking together, and the help that we're trying to create within the world, and the pun intended, the joy we're trying to scatter. It's just like, you kind of look back and it all just kind of leads into this culmination of one thing. And I'm sure there's a next iteration of this that might happen, but like, I'm really trying to live a life now that's like really inspired by experiments.
Yeah.
It's just like, man, the scatter joy thing, it's like really cool, but like every project is kind of like an experiment. Every event's kind of an experiment. Every apparel drop's kind of an experiment. Every time we have feedback from someone that uses our resources, it's an experiment, and it's like, so can we tinker? Can we grow? Can we change? And I'm sure it's going to lead into something next. And then I'll get to that next and I'll look back at what we're doing now and be like, it kind of just led into this,
Mm-hmm.
And so you kind of start living when you have that moment where you look back and realize that everything led to this. You kind of live in the present, really expectant for what's next, but then also really grateful for what's now. And so I'm like right there now,
Yeah. So what are your hopes for like future Scatterjoy? Like what is that? And I don't mean like, what's your 5-year plan? Like,
dude,
but like, what's, even like if we were painting like the prettiest picture of what Scatterjoy becomes, like, what do you want to do with it?
I would love, and we launched with this idea, I would love to have a mental health care scholarship to remove that hurdle from people's lives, to say like, I have found the therapist, I've done the search, I've overcome the stigma, and now the only thing in my way is the cost. I can't afford it. And therapy's not a one and done thing. To be able to help people cover the cost of therapy or counseling would just be a dream. And we're working towards that. We're going to launch a beta program soon, which is really cool. And it's an experiment. We're going to learn from it. We're going to help people doing it, and we'll see like what we can do better. And that takes fundraising, for sure. Because if you do the math on a therapy session, it ain't cheap. And we don't want to just like bless someone with one therapy session and be like, hey, hope you figure it out from here. We want to support people at least, 4 to 6 sessions or things like that. And so that would be a dream. We want a Scatterjoy bus.
Yeah, I've seen you guys post about that.
That would be a dream.
Yeah.
Just in the birth of the statement that I made earlier of like loneliness, hopelessness, selfishness. It's like, man, can we get a bus, outfit it in a way that it's like a mobile community hub where we pick people up, we take them on a service project, but on the way to the service project, we do a mental health workshop, and then on the way back from the service project, we do a joy ride, and we party.
Oh,
we have fun.
Good. That's so good.
So we want a Scatterjoy bus. I think that would be so fun.
Man, that's so good.
And then we just want to host more events. I think like we're just like, we don't have a 5-year plan. We just want more community.
Yep.
We want to help more people. And we have things implemented right now where we can just be like, we could be happy and we could just like keep doing the things we're doing. We could keep doing apparel. We could keep doing like our workshops and events, and we could keep doing pointing people to the resources and stuff. But like, I think the community aspect is just such a flashing red light for us, that we want to really help solve that problem in like really creative, compassionate ways. And so that would be the dream, honestly. Imagine going on a tour with that bus and hitting up different cities and putting on like different events and stuff. Cause like every event that we do kind of is like it's almost like a backdoor, like mental health kind of thing. It's like you come to it and you hear like spoken word, but then like we also talk about like mental health and like provide resources and stuff. And so it's like, yeah, a tour would be cool.
I love that. I need to make it out to one of those.
Yeah.
I need to make it to an event finally.
For sure.
I feel like any ones that I've seen like get shared or whatever, I'm like, all right, it's that night, and then something comes, and then like by the time I see you post about it, I'm like, this happened, I'm like, oh, right, yeah.
What we want to do is create as much FOMO as possible with every event that we host.
It's working, at least on me.
And so it's like that's what we want to do. Yeah, we just want to do more. We don't have a 5-year plan. We just want to do more.
Yep.
So I like that kind of mindset.
So let's stick with some future talk here. If right now, future Zach showed up and he's going to tell some stuff to you.
I feel like I'm in the New Girl episode where Nick Miller meets like old future Nick Miller. Do you watch New Girl?
I watched New Girl forever ago, but I don't remember.
You gotta make it through.
I don't remember.
All right, future Zach.
Future Zach. He shows up. He's sharing some stuff with you. Not about Scatterjoy. He's not telling you, hey man, yeah, we got the bus, we got the tour, it's awesome, it all works out, we got a scholarship, blah, blah, blah. He's telling you stuff about you. So he's saying, hey, this is what we've experienced. This is what we've done. What do you want him to be saying to you? What do you hope that he would share?
I would hope that he would share the impact, more of the impact that our character made more than our accomplishments. And I say that with like deep reflection of like what I've been through up until this point. I just kind of want to keep living the same way, honestly. Having kids now kind of opens your eyes up to like wanting to be the best version of yourself because of them too, and for your wife, and just for the people in your life. And so I don't know, I'm heavily driven by things with Scatterjoy. I want that to just blow up and succeed and do bigger and grander things than we're already doing. But I would much rather be a really good dad and just a really good husband, man. And so I hope that like future Zach, and I'm not just saying this to like literally blow smoke and make me look like super humble. That's literally, when I was in high school, that's all I wanted to be. Like all my friends were like, oh, I want to be a doctor. I want to go like play in the majors, like all this stuff. Like I want to do this, that. And I was like, I don't know. I just kind of want to be like a family man, you know? And so like, I really feel like I'm in my prime right now, man. And I'm not like, I am bragging about that. I am in my prime right now. Yep. I have a wife and a daughter and a son at home, 3-year-old and the 8-month-old, and I'm loving it. It's stressful. Bedtimes are hard. But dude, like, yeah, I want to be remembered, and I want to be known for my character more than my accomplishments, for sure.
I love it. Final 2 things. I have been giving the guest the captain's chair at the end of these episodes. I've been asking you all the questions up to this point.
Ooh.
So is there any one thing that you want to throw my way? Put me in the hot seat. You can ask me anything. It can be big, small, in between. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Anything come to mind?
What were the biggest things other than healthy conversation with friends and therapy that you implemented in your life to get you out of that dark time within your mental health?
I think it was listening, and this might be an odd answer, but one, it was action, putting action to all the things I was continuously thinking. I just, if I can just do this, if I can reach out to these people, if I can sit with a friend, if I can talk about these things, if I can try to, if I need to restructure my day today, what are the things that I need to put action to receive, right?
Yeah.
Because I can't just sit and be like, oh, one day I'm going to wake up and it's all going to be okay.
Yeah. But
my other answer is listening to a voice that I had tucked deep down just during that time frame. That is like a confident voice who believes in who I am and believes that I was strong enough to make it through that. For me, I think I tucked that voice super far away, and all the other voices were telling me, this is terrible, this sucks, we feel awful. And I was like clinging to like the echo of that voice far in the back, right? Of like, hey, remember all the work we've done to get here, right? Remember that we've got the perfect record of making it through all of our worst days.
That's so good.
And I know that might be a silly way to explain that, but like that I think is a lesson that I learned through that is like, not to trail off into something much longer than what this needs to be, but like I feel like it made me realize that maybe in us, and there might be more than this, but the way I can explain it is I feel like we have like two versions of confidence in us. One is at the forefront of our mind and one is at the back of our mind. I didn't have the forefront confidence. It's not the confidence where I could walk into a room and I was like, I feel great today. I'm good. I got this. My problems aren't that big a deal. That was broken and shattered, right?
Yeah.
But it was the subconscious confidence tucked in the back of my mind that is like the calloused confidence. It's the confidence that we build up through all the things that we've been through. It's not the in the moment thing.
Yeah.
It's the reserve in the tank, right?
That's good.
And that, listening to that, finally tapping into, hey, why do I feel like I can get through this? Why do I feel like I can deal with this? Like I'm trying to tell myself, I'm trying to get myself to believe that.
Yeah.
But that front brain confidence, it's not showing up, right? But finally listening to that voice in the back and be like, well, it's yelling at me for a reason. It's there for a reason. And then turning that into the action of, okay, I'm going to embrace, just as I'm embracing these bad thoughts and the terrible thoughts and hearing them all out, right? I got to stop ignoring the one that's telling me like, we got this. We got this one again.
Yeah.
So I think it was kind of like identifying those two versions of confidence that at least I believe that I have in me. But then just putting the action to it.
Yeah.
Even in the tiniest way, like realizing that like I could do something about it that isn't going to solve it immediately, but how can I reshape this, remold it, and just continue to grow from it and move past it, taking that first single step.
Yeah, it's like small wins.
Exactly.
Small wins.
They build up into the larger thing where at some point you can sit and be like, oh, okay, like now my ultimate win is that I learned from that.
Yeah.
And we're always going to carry that bad moment with us, right? We're always going to carry that difficult thing with us. It's not that we can just get rid of it and be like, oh, cool, I grew from that. Now I'm confident. I don't have to think about it anymore. No, there's always going to be another bad day. There's going to be a bad thought that creeps in here and there, whatever. But it's listening to that one version of confident you that says, yeah, we're thinking that thought. It's there. We've got that emotion with us. That's okay. Might be a scar now, right? But we're still here, and we're going to keep going.
Yep.
And we're going to embrace like whatever comes along the way.
Yeah, I've said this before. It's like scars. Sometimes we are naturally shameful of scars. I'm shameful of mine, or I was on my chest when I had my heart surgery. But scars are a physical representation of resilience. And so it's like, man, that is worth celebrating. Like the calloused confidence that continues to fight and grow, and you battle and you get through things and you have these small wins and you get out of bed and you go to work and you go to dinner with a friend and you do all these things. Like, celebrate that. It's worth celebrating.
Yep. I love it. Final question for you, my friend, and then this will be officially a podcast.
Hey.
So last question, I ask everybody the exact same thing at the end of all of these episodes. So it's coming your way now. Right now, I want you to pretend like everyone in the world is hearing you speak. They are on the other end of that microphone. And you get to share something with them. So right now is the big movie moment where you get to talk to everybody. So you got a live mic connected to all of the people around the world. What is it that you're telling them, and what do you want them to hear?
I'm just going to keep it simple. It's one of our taglines with the Scatter Joy Project. We always say the best way to experience joy is to scatter it, to act in selfless ways. It just comes back to you.
Dude, I love it, man. Dude, this was a blast.
Yeah, man. I had so much fun.
Thank you so much for I'm stoked that we finally got to meet. I'm stoked and I always love when I can meet somebody for the first time and for sure sit with them for like 2 hours and talk about literally all the things. Of course, like links will be in the show notes and all that sort of stuff, but I'd love for you to share like any final things that you really want people to know about the Scatter Joy. Where can they find it? If they want to come volunteer, how can they do that?
Yeah.
All the information.
Yeah. So everywhere we are the Scatter Joy Project, website, Instagram, anything. If you want to support the cause, you can find donation links. If you want to buy gear and support the cause in that way with 100% of the profits pouring back into the nonprofit, you can find that link on our Instagram and our website. You can learn about how to get involved, volunteer aspects, different things like that. Events coming up, website, Instagram is where you need to find us, and make sure that you subscribe to our email list. We send out a bunch of like sneak peeks and exclusive like stories and news that way too. So join in, join the fun, scatter some joy.
Dude, I love it, man. Thank you so much, dude. Thank you so much.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me.
All right, huge thank you to Zach for being on the show, opening up and sharing his story. I definitely urge you to go check out Scatter Joy, of course. Not only do they stand for great things, but they just have a ton of solid resources and helpful tools for those of us that are battling with mental health issues. For real, it's more than just them posting about mental health stuff on social media. They really do offer a lot of great help, a lot of solid resources. You heard them talk about the crisis line and all that, and everything else that they do in the episode. You just heard it. So if you feel like you need it, go check it out. They share a lot of this stuff pretty often. So of course, it goes without saying, if you think any of it may be helpful to you or to anyone you know, I definitely will tell you, go check them out and give it a follow. So you can find them at Scatter Joy Project, or you can hop over to the scatterjoyproject.com for more information on all that they do, the support that they offer, how to get involved yourself. You can check out their podcast, or of course, if you just want to support them in their cause, you can grab some of the rad apparel as well. I own some of their stuff. It's really dope. So go support them. And of course, get the support that you may need if you need it. Do not be afraid to reach out if you do. Talk to someone, whether it's somebody you're close to, or maybe even someone like me, or an organization like Scatter Joy, or someone like Zach. Help is often just a conversation away. And sure, yes, I get it. That might sound generic. It might sound a little cheesy, but I promise you, it is genuinely true, you guys. I have gotten through some of my darkest times, and I do mean truly darkest times, by simply reaching out to people, looking for that help, asking for help, talking about it, facing it, and just finding the help that I needed at that time. So it's out there if you can look for it, if you can find it. There are a ton of resources out there. So go check out Scatter Joy, or take those steps that you might individually need if you feel like you need it. I'm telling you, it's out there. You can find the help that you want. So let's just wrap this one up. Follow the show at WYDH Pod. Subscribe, follow, all that good stuff. But again, for sure, check out Scatter Joy. And again, if you need help, I promise you it is out there. But as always, thank you for listening. If you watched on my YouTube channel, thanks for looking. And like always, I'll be back in the next episode with a brand new awesome guest that you may or may not know of, as they share a story that you for sure never heard.